Global Indian actress and comedy pioneer Nina Wadia, OBE, former Goodness Gracious Me star, and the EastEnders Mrs. Masood. She's recently been recognised for services to entertainment and charity by Her Majesty the Queen in the New Year's Honours List 2021. Join iGlobal for a peek into Nina's life and achievements in our profile series. Vidhu Sharma speaks to her about how she kick-started her career in comedy and acting, her honourable work with local and global charities, and what she hopes to do with her OBE. She even has some advice for budding artists and changemakers trying to break through the glass ceiling in the entertainment industry. All this and more coming up on iGlobal.
There's been a few nice things that have happened with it. I have had lovely moments where my neighbors have come over with cards and flowers and things and just said, "We're so proud of you," which is amazing. The only heartbreaking thing for me is that my parents were not around to see this. I know everyone says, "Oh, well, of course they see it all. They're still with you and blah, blah, blah." I get that. I just wish I'd had that moment to be able to go to them and go, "You're not going to believe this one." Because when the phone call came through, oh my gosh, Vidhu, I've got to tell you this, right? When the phone call came through, I answer this thing. I don't normally answer number I don't know. And I certainly don't ever answer no caller ID. But it was a mobile number, and I'm doing this Netflix series right now. So I thought it could be the production manager because I haven't put their names in yet. So I answer the phone. And this guy basically says he's calling from the cabinet office. Now, this call came through on my birthday in December. So I said, yes, I'm sure you are. I told him to go away.
No, you didn't.
Yep. And I hung up on him. So then, like, a few minutes go by and the call comes back in and I'm like, hello? And I'm thinking, this is a persistent prank caller. Yeah. And he said, "I really am calling from the cabinet office." He says, "If you're suspicious of it," he says, "please look up the number on the internet and, call." I said, "How can I help you?" And he said, "I'm going to send you through an email. You need to respond in 48 hours. And he says, "Normally a letter is sent through, but we can't send it because of the pandemic." I said, "Well, what's it about?" He says, "Well, just read the email." So I gave him my email address and I put the email up and it said, "You've been put forward for an OBE and would you be willing to accept it?" And I went, what am I going to say? No.
I didn't realize that you were born in Mumbai and then you moved to Hong Kong and then you moved over here. So what is that sort of story before even the career?
Sure. So I grew up in Bombay, in Dadar Parsi colony. Yeah, a little one-bedroom flat with my whole family and my grandma as well. Perfectly happy plodding along, not knowing any more of the world. And when I was 9 years old, my parents sort of came into the living room, got us kids together and said, right, we're moving to Hong Kong in a couple of months. And I was super excited because I've always loved traveling, always loved meeting new people. So for me, it was just hugely exciting. Of course, it was a bit sad to leave my friends behind, but at 9, you're just kind of just excited. So moved to Hong Kong and my parents decided that they were going to run a restaurant there. I have no idea why. I never understood the inner working of the minds of my parents. But so yes, we went and ran a restaurant called the Ashota in Wyndham Street in Hong Kong. And that's where I went to school. It was an English school foundation and it was called Island School. And that's where my fast friends that I have now are still people I've known since I was 11 years old. So very, very tight-knit kind of friendship community. And then my passions from India, where I went to Vaijayanti Mala's Bharatanatyam school, because I always loved to dance, changed to doing tap because there were no Bharatanatyam classes in Hong Kong, believe it or not. So I ended up doing tap there. And then towards the end of my school career, doing my A-levels, I was constantly writing little sketches during my A-level years. And one of them, just sort of really, really hit home. And I performed in one of them reluctantly. I enjoyed dancing. I was confident doing that, but acting wise, I didn't really have the experience. So I did it and I had such a blast doing it that I thought, okay, all right, I think this is given me the biggest buzz I've ever had in my life. and decided then and there that I was going to be an actor. Then went home and told my parents, and my mum was hugely upset.
What did she
Because,
aspire for you to become? What did she want for
oh, the
you?
usual at
Yeah,
that
okay.
time, she wanted me to be a lawyer so bad. She knew there was no chance of being a doctor because I would pass out at the sight of blood. So I kind of, I got my brother on board to convince her. And next thing I know, I was coming out to the UK because I had a choice of either going to the States or to the UK to go to drama school. And I chose the UK because my parents had lived here in the 50s, but also I love Shakespeare. I love any kind of classical theatre. So it made sense to come to the home of classical theatre. So I came to England. And yeah.
Oh, it's interesting to me that your parents were in the UK, then went back to Bombay. What was that? You never really hear that migration story. What
Yeah,
was it?
Mum didn't like it here. When she was here in the 50s, she just kept saying it's so cold. She was just cold all the time, and she missed her friends in India, and she missed her family, and my dad wasn't too enamored with England at the time either. There was no love here because there was no real roots here or real family. So they went
That's
back.
really brave of them to have moved back, because so many people were just sort of putting up with it for the opportunity. But
Yeah,
it's really
but that was the
refreshing
thing.
to
See,
hear.
my parents, it's never been about money for them. It's never been about money for anyone in our family. We've always followed our heart with wherever we want to be. And I grew up in a very happy, fun household with very little money. And I think people underestimate that. I think people underestimate the power of just family. And it's great within our Indian culture to be ambitious and to be career oriented and all of that. I have that in me, don't get me wrong. But I think people also forget that the simplicity that you can have in life with just your family and the enjoyment you can have with them is something that we shouldn't forget. And if nothing else, the pandemic has taught us that.
Yes, of course. So did they spend the rest of their years in Hong Kong and Bombay then, or did they come over to the UK with you at any point?
Well, sadly, my mum fell ill, and by then her brother and a lot of her family had been in England. So she decided to move to England, and that way she was near me as well, and I was near her because I was the youngest child, and she wanted to be with me as I was at drama school and just show that there was support. So it was nice in a way because we got a little flat in Sutton, of all places. Um, and yeah, I live with my parents, so I could go to drama school and start my career. And yeah, and mum was looked after. So
Priceless moments. I think those must have
yeah,
been the memories that you actually look back on and cherish the most.
definitely, definitely.
So then from drama school, what's the sort of that gap between drama school and Goodness Gracious Me then? What did you feel
Right.
that time?
So drama school initially, the only one we could really afford was a little drama school in Richmond, opposite an old people's bowling green. And the
Don't even
director
have
of
them
that,
anymore.
no, we don't even have them anymore. The director of that theatre company ran off with all our money in the third term, all the students' money, yeah. And my mum kept saying, "See, it's a sign. You're not meant to do this. It's a rough profession." And I looked at it as, well, if the worst bit's happening now, then that means good bits are going to come later. I've
Yeah,
always
there's a
been a
good
yin and
outlet.
yang kind of person. So um, I panicked, of course, because, this guy went off with whatever little money we had to pay for that last term. And a lovely lady, Barbara Buckmaster, her name was, she ran the London Theatre School in Wandsworth. And she came and took 2 students, and I was one of them. And I did my next year with her. I was meant to do 3 years, but I did only 1 year with her. And she said to me, "You know what, you should just go out and audition." She says, "I think you're good enough to start." So I wrote to all the casting directors. I wrote to all the agents at the back of the stage newspaper at the time. That was a thing to do. And one replied.
Wow.
A lovely, lovely woman called Sue Hammer. And she was an agent. She lives in Ottershaw in Chertsey. And she is now Swami Satvikananda. She is
Okay.
she's an incredible woman. She just decided that this profession was not good for her, and halfway through my sort of time with her as an agent, she decided to become a Swami. So,
and do you stay in touch with her? Are you
very close to her?
wow?
Very close to her. She is a dear family friend, and she blames my father for it, because whenever she talked to my dad would say to her, just do what your heart wants you to do. And I'm like, Dad, that's my agent, for goodness sake.
Driven her away.
Driven away. But she's an incredible woman. And so I had my first few years with her, and what she did for me was, she said, look, what's your actual passion? And my passion was theatre. So I started at Theatre Royal Stratford East, and I played a Sindhi girl called Rani Murjani, very sort of spoilt little brat who lived
Ani
in this
at the end
flats.
is very important
Ani.
for it to be Sindhi.
Absolutely. So I did that, and it was a play called The House of the Sun, with an amazing theatre company called Tamasha. And from that, I then got sort of shows at Theatre in Panto, that they used to do, and I kind of alternated between doing Indian stuff and British stuff. So I kind of bounced back because I could tap, so I ended up in this show dancing and singing. So I kind of did all of this, and I did that for about 6 years. And towards the end of that sort of 6th year, going into the 7th year, I got to work with Mark Rylance. He was doing the Scottish play, and I ended up playing First Witch and understudying Lady M. And I don't like saying the name, as you can tell. And then next thing I know, I went back to Stratford East, and there were about 6 or 7 of us. And Philip Headley, the artistic director, said to us, why don't you write something together? So all of us got together, and we created something called Do You Eat With Your Fingers? And I remember at a restaurant I'd gone to in Stratford East, it was a bunch of white friends, and I was the only Indian girl there. And the waiter didn't give me any cutlery. So I said to him in Hindi, Mujhe kyun nahi diya? So he looked at me and he went, you eat with your fingers, and walked off. Anyway, the show was called, I know. So the show was called Do You Eat With Your Fingers? And while I was doing that show, Sanjeev Bhaskar was doing The Secret Asians across the road at the Tom Allen Centre. And it turns out he actually lived right next to me in Hounslow. So he approached me and said, look, I'm doing a special kind of Secret Asians thing. Would you come in and join us? There's these guys coming from BBC. They've done The Real McCoy, and they're looking for, comedy performers. And I think you'd be really good to do it. So we ended up, Nitin Soni, Sanjeev Bhaskar, and myself, doing this show at the Oval House. So Anil Gupta and Sharat Sadhana, the main 2 people from Goodness Gracious Me, the producer and the writer, they came to see us. And I told them I was in this show called Do It With Your Fingers. So they came to see that one. And then they basically said, we'd like you to join our team. We're going to do a one-off show at the Riverside Studios in Hammersmith called Peter Sellers is Dead. And, we're going to show it to all the commissioners of the BBC, and hopefully they'll pick it up. And I was like, this will never happen. It's such an Indian show. I was just happy for Indians to be happy, to be honest. We did the show, and next thing I know, it's on radio. From radio, it goes to TV, and everyone's like, you guys are role models. I'm not, I'm just like, it's my first ever TV production. So, I was terrified.
Yes, of course.
Kuli had come from, what's it called? The Real McCoy. So all of a sudden, we're doing this kind of show together, and it's just suddenly taken off. And when it was on TV here, series 1, I was actually visiting my sister who had married a Canadian out in Alberta, Calgary. That's where I met my now husband as well. And I remember him kind of going, so what do you do? I said, I'm an actress. And he went, are you famous? I went, no. So I'm just a theatre actress. I came out from there back to England. I was on Oxford Street with my friend, and people were shouting my name out. And I'm going, what's going on? Why do people know my name is Nina? And it was just literally, they watched Goodness Gracious Me, and they fell in love with it. And
so
next
surreal, but it was so niche, so ahead of its time, that had you been just a viewer watching it, you probably would have felt the same way. But being immersed in it, you probably didn't understand at that time what it meant.
Not at all. Like I said, my goal was, I thought it was great for the Indian community, and I thought that as long as we enjoy it, and you know, anyone who speaks any kind of Urdu enjoys it, you know, the Pakistani community, Indian community, all over the world, the Parsi community, as long as they get it, I'm happy. But the British community took it to heart, because I think they got what we were trying to do. There's a great sense of right and wrong, and a great sense of the underdog, supporting the underdog within the British kind of mentality. And we hit that nerve. And the good thing about us is that I think we made fun of everyone. We made fun of, you know, white people. We made fun of black people. We made fun of ourselves. We made fun of Chinese people. I mean, everyone was left kind of completely destroyed, you know, but we did it equally, and we did it with a sense of positivity and love. And that's what's important.
What do you think, what do you feel comedy allowed you to be able to showcase as a perspective during that show?
That's a great question. I think, okay, for me, comedy is the universal language. You can get a message across to people if you do it with a sense of humor. You can express some kind of like I've created this little character right now that I'm doing called Lockdown Mother, because you know, it's for me, it's letting my frustration out as to how I'm trapped in this house with two teenagers, you know, who are going through whatever their angst is right now. And for me, it's important to kind of, with a sense of humor, put across the angst so that there is an outlet for it without being negative. And for us, with Goodness Gracious Me, we were trying to show our experience as immigrants in this country, which can be, at that time, it was quite negative. We wanted to turn it into a, hey, look what we go through. That's why the things like going for an English were really important, because in that sketch, if you really listen to what we're doing, we are literally flipping what's happened. And Sharat writing that sketch was a freaking genius. You know, he nailed it, absolutely nailed it. And it's our experience of kind of how we felt slightly out of place. And so because we turned it on its head, and the British kind of just general culture is so accepting, they embraced us. And I think that was the success of Goodness Gracious Me.
Yeah. And that conversation was started then, but now it's so widespread. Do you feel like we've made progress in a big way, or do you think it's been quite incremental and we're still taking small steps? Because we get to see a lot about representation, but sometimes it feels like we're still speaking to that echo chamber, and there's sometimes a lot of criticism that more progress could have been made by this point. Do you feel the same way?
Absolutely. More progress needs to still be made, and it is a slow process. I go back to, you know, people like Jamila Massey and Saeed Jaffrey. You know, the struggles that they went through in their time was way harder than we did it with Goodness Gracious Me. And now the next generation coming up, it's much easier for them. You know, you've got so many other mediums. You know, you can go onto YouTube, you can go onto, you know, I don't know what I'm doing, TikTok. Just go on to different mediums and get your message out there in the way that you want to. So I'm hoping that if nothing else, Goodness Gracious Me gave people the confidence to do that. You know, and I still support kind of new people. I mean, I know that Hamza and Ayla, you know, when they came out, they wrote to me completely out of the blue, and they were like, listen, we're just on YouTube, you know, but we're doing really well, and, you know, we'd love for you to do something for us, and this is a long shot, and we have no money, and you name it. And I just said, it comes out of the material. Show me the material. If I think it's funny, I'll do it. If I don't think it's funny, I won't do it. I don't care if you don't have the money to pay me. That doesn't matter to me. What matters is if you're going to do good work and it's going to give you a leg up, why not? You know, because I didn't really get that. I had no one that I could get that from when I started, and I struggled, you know. So it's a sense of giving back. And I think that's really important, especially for them now. And I think they have that in them. I think the new guys that are now being successful, I think will also then pay on to the following generation.
We've definitely learned the value of networks now.
I then fell pregnant with my second child, and that's when EastEnders got in touch and said, hey, we've got this idea of this character, and would you come in and talk to us, and let's create her together. And I remember it was a very funny moment where I thought my agent had told them I was 8 months pregnant. My agent thought I'd told them. I turn up to meet them, and I'm huge. And I remember the casting director, the exec producer, just looking at me going, "Oh, we needed you to start straight away." And I went, "I don't think that's going to happen."
Yeah.
So I actually thought the job had gone away, but they waited for me. And then when I didn't wait long, my son was only about 6 weeks old, and they said, "We'll give you a nanny. We'll give you a nice dressing room with a thing you can walk off set to breastfeed every 2 hours, but we want you." So I took the job, and I went in for 6 months, and I stayed for 6.5 years, which is crazy.
Wow, and you were perfect for the role.
I
And again,
loved
did so much in terms of representation. And now we see an Indian family on EastEnders again. And the other main thing that I really wanted to touch on is because you're involved with so much, so many charities, so much charity work. And part of the OBE was about your contributions to charity and entertainment. Could you tell us a little bit about why it is that you're sort of affiliated with kidney charity, a diabetes charity, then an education charity? Like what's with that diversity?
So the kidney charity is because my mum had polycystic kidneys and had a transplant because of it, and sadly passed away because of it. So I wanted to give back as much as I could in terms of the kidney community, because especially within the South Asian community, because of our diets, people get affected a lot, and they need help. So I wanted to make sure that whatever help was given to our family, we could return that tenfold. So I try and make people aware of PKD and make people aware of, what help is out there. I've opened a couple of units in Leicester, in Ashford, Middlesex, where they've got new beds, which is incredible. And I fought for the beds to have TVs attached to them, because it's brilliant. Hours and hours of boredom of sitting there.
It's a dialysis unit, right?
Yeah. That's right, yeah. Dialysis units across the country. It is a hugely unpleasant thing having to go for dialysis. I don't think people realize it takes a big toll on your life, And then I support JDRF, and I support Diabetes UK, because 3 years ago my son got diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and I want them to find a cure for it. And there is a cure on the cards, so it's just a waiting game, and it's raising as much money as we can for research, and making sure that if type 1 and type 2 can be prevented, treated and cured, then hopefully that will take the onus off the whole kidney thing as well, because kidney disease can start with diabetes. So it's just making people aware of looking after themselves health-wise, and therefore they can move ahead in a very positive way.
You've sort of alluded to it with your parents not really ever putting so much focus on money and really valuing family and being together. Would you say that is what drives you to give back as much as you do?
I think it's a general Parsi thing. It's the Zoroastrian community. We're brought up to know that community and people are more important than anything else. When we pray for good health. That's the first thing you pray for. Then you pray for happiness, and then you pray for prosperity, so that you can help to make the first two things work. Because it does help. It's not like life is easier when you do have it, but you have to understand that you can't take it with you. So you may as well spend it spreading that kind of good health and good love and good happiness while you can. Otherwise, what are you hoarding it for? It makes no sense. I truly believe, having seen my mum go through the hell that she did, that this is important. Again, the only way that I could reconcile the fact that my son had type 1 was by doing something about it. But I'll be honest with you, when he first got diagnosed, I wanted to run away, as far away as I possibly could, because I felt it was unfair. I felt it was, I just felt like, why has it come to my family? It's like, it's just, but then I realized that maybe it's come to my family because I'm someone who will do something about it. So, you know, that's why I became an ambassador for JDRF as fast as I could, because I know that that organization, their entire goal in life is to find the cure for type 1. And it is there, it is out there.
Yeah. I'm really
and
touched by your ability to look at life's problems and then potentially see the worst of it to start with, but then completely change your perspective in a big way, and to be able to see the positive angle of it, or for it to propel you into action. I'm really sort of, that's a really nice thing that I've observed in you, just in everything that you've spoken about, whether it be your parents or your child, or the work that you've done.
Well, do you know, it's really interesting. From when I was very, very young, my parents used to notice that if there was ever a kid that was going through something, if there's an issue or a problem, they would migrate towards me. And then my husband said to me one day, and this may not come across well, but he said, because, oh my God, you've got Statue of Liberty face. I said, what is that? And it's because he noticed that I'll be sitting on a tube, right, going to work. I'll have my headphones in, I'll have my hat down, I'll be reading a book, and still the person that will sit down next to me will just start talking to me and tell me all their problems. And you just go, what did I do? You know, like my favorite one was I did Country File up in Scotland, and I was coming back with a producer on the flight, and he'd gone to the bar to get a drink, and I was waiting for him, and this lady sort of stopped, and she went, oh my God, is that you? You know, she's like, oh, she's all excited because she's a massive fan of Goodness Gracious Me. And she just pulls up the chair, and I was about to go, actually he's sitting there, but too late. She sat down, and within the first 3 minutes of talking to me, she told me who she was, where she was going to on the flight, how her husband had just died of cancer a year ago, how, you know, she, you know, really felt connected somehow to me. And I've never met this woman before.
Wow.
The producer's standing behind her with 2 pints of Guinness like this, just looking at me going, because it's the second person that has done that. And she told me this whole thing, and about 10 minutes went by, and she went, oh God, I've been talking for ages. She says, I'm so sorry. She goes, you know, she says, thank you so much. I really needed to chat with you. I hadn't said one word. Wow. And then she gets up and off she goes. And I thought, I didn't know what happens to me. And it's Statue of Liberty face. That's what he's called it now.
Exude that empathy. People know they can confide in you.
Bring me your wretched, bring me your this, bring me your that. That's who this face is. And I'm like, great. But I mean, I don't get me wrong. I don't dislike it. I just don't understand it. But I just go with it, because that's what I've always done. I've let the universe guide my career. Everything that I've done, I've literally just, initially, I used to be so wound up in my 20s. I would be so, I really want this, I really want that. And if I didn't get a job, I'd cry. If I didn't get this, I'd get upset. And my mum would just go, leave it. If it's not good for you, it's not going to happen for you. So she goes, you know, you're being looked after by a bigger power. So she said, just let the universe do its job. If you don't get that job, it's because it was not good for you. I mean, I look at this big American job that had come my way, that, you know, we did one kind of series off, and then it just died. And I thought, oh man, you know, it was such a great job, whatever. I would have been stuck in America all this time away from my family if I'd done it. Yeah. So there is something guiding in a bigger way that can see much further than I can. And so I just go, okay, phew, I'm back home with my family. You know, I would have been stuck out there.
Yeah, of course. And you mentioned, what we were speaking about earlier about, you know, how your father wanted you to do EastEnders, and then 6 months later you get that phone call. So
yeah, that's
little signs.
There's a real Indian thing. I think you'll find lots of Indians believe in all that stuff. You know, like we'll just go, I can't believe that. But that is how my work has happened for me, and my career has happened for me. You know, I get excited about working with someone. I love Stephen Merchant, and I've been there, oh, it'd be so nice to work with him. I'm working with him now. I'm doing, you know, this show with him now. And I'm like, this is crazy. You know, things that I've only ever dreamt of that might happen, you know, they do. They take a long time, but they do happen. And you have to be resilient that way. Yeah. But to very briefly go back to my charity stuff, for my dad was an orphan. And when we moved to England, I do support with my brother, the orphanage in Pune that looked after him. But I joined Bernardo's here because I felt that Bernardo's really does great work. What they do, which is so brilliant, is they take in children who have either been abused or have had very problematic young lives or are orphans, and they give them a skill set. You know, they teach them how to paint, or they'll teach them how to do a BTEC, or they'll teach them something that means that when they leave Bernardo's care, they have their own skill set so they can live their life for themselves. And that's why Bernardo's is important to me, and a particular charity called Education Saves Lives. Education Saves Lives is incredible. It used to be called Tare Machi, and it was about this girl, you know, the story about the starfish being thrown into the ocean, and the girl who saves one starfish at a time, and there's thousands of them. And someone says to her, "You're not going to be able to save all of them." She goes, "So what? So if I only save these, at least I've saved something." So it was set up by Helen Taylor Thompson, who is an incredible woman. She very sadly, it broke my heart, she passed away last year. And if I can be half the woman that she was, I will be in heaven, because her idea was to take old shipping containers, to put tablets in them like I don't mean pills, I mean tablets like iPads and things, in which initially I did the voiceover in however many languages I spoke, teaching children and young women about basic hygiene, about their rights, about, you know, sex education, about violence against women, all of that. And then those tablets will be put into these shipping containers and dropped in the middle of villages in India and Africa. And it was an incredible concept, and she made it come true. And she was an amazing woman, and she was very inspirational to me. And so I hope to follow in her footsteps, in that, you know, even the smaller charities that come my way. There's one called Binti, which is run by Manjeet.
Charity,
yeah, you know, which she said there's such a stigma attached to periods, and there are women in India who have no access to sanitary towels, and was like, oh my gosh. And so whatever charity comes my way, I try my best. I'm doing a lot right now with the domestic abuse stuff that's going on. The Commonwealth has supported the domestic violence, kind of anti-domestic violence bill, and it's brilliant. It's got a place where people can go to, especially during the pandemic. They have access to where they can go to, and I've put that up on my Instagram page. So there's a lot of people that want support, want help, and that need it, and aren't in a position to get it. So we need to make people aware. This is out there. Help whichever charity you want. And if you have a lot of money, please, for goodness sake, help all of them.
What do you hope to be able to do with it?
Well, you know, having an honor to put after your name, it just makes you, it takes, the people take you more seriously. So what this will allow me to do now is I'll hopefully be able to get into events that I haven't been able to get into so far, where, you know, there's a people with a lot more money, you know, and then I can be bold and say, look, I've got an OB, you need to give me some cash for this charity. That's what I'm going to use it for, to be honest, because I think the universe has brought it to me for that reason. There's been a few nice things that have happened with it. I have had lovely moments where my neighbors have come over with cards and flowers and things and just said, we're so proud of you, which is amazing. The only heartbreaking thing for me is that my parents were not around to see this. I know everyone says, oh, well, of course they see it all. They, you know, they're still with you and blah, blah, blah. I get that. I just wish I'd had that moment to be able to go to them and go, you're not going to believe this one.
How did the family react? They must have been over the moon.
My husband was incredibly proud of me, and, you know, and he's been the biggest support in my life. I couldn't have the career I have and the children and the family without a husband like him. He is genuinely the power behind me. I know they always say it's the woman's the power behind their husband, but you know what? There are plenty of husbands who do return the favor, and he's one of them. He's my biggest champion. And my kids, it was very funny because my son's 13, my daughter's 17, and my daughter kind of knows what it is, and she was like, oh mom, that's brilliant, big hug. And then I told my son, and he was like, yay, big hug. About half an hour goes by, comes to me quietly while I'm in the kitchen. He goes, mum, I said, yeah. He goes, what's an OB? So I told him, and he said, I said, if you didn't know, why were you so excited for me? He said, because you were so happy. I didn't want to make you feel bad.
Oh, so sweet. At least there's emotional empathy there, like yourself.
Yeah.
He's got that from you then.
Yes, yeah, he wants to be a stand-up comic. I'm in trouble.
Oh, for real.
We'll never see any money coming in the house there, I can tell you that.
Just while we're on family then, I did want to ask, without getting too personal, I just wanted to ask, where did you find the time to fit in marriage and kids? And so you mentioned that you met your husband in Canada, but then,
Yes.
you know, so many jobs and such a fast-paced career. How did you manage all of that?
I stay up very late. It's okay. You see the positive side of things because that's what I put forward. But I mean, it is a real marriage. We fight like hell. It's like any marriage. We have our ups, we have our downs. You know, the kids scream at me, I scream at the kids. Yeah. It's a normal marriage. But nobody sees everything. But what I can tell you is that, you know, there is a genuine kind of equality in my marriage, which is something I've always fought for with women, you know, and I think it's happening more and more. Now I see a lot more marriages where, you know, the husband can have a career and a family life, and so can the wife. And
well, you've both spent some considerable time in the limelight and in the creative scene as well. So do you find that you have a connection on that level as well then? You understand each other better?
Well, I think my dad always said the biggest word in a marriage is compromise. So when I've been busy with work, he is with the kids. When he gets a really good job, I say no to jobs and I'm with the kids. So we do have that balance, because if we don't have that balance, and it has happened where one of us is working more than the other, and then you feel this sort of heaviness in the marriage and you kind of go, oh, this is difficult because, you know, we both want to do it. But if you want it all, you have to compromise. And sacrifice, and that can be difficult early on in the marriage. It gets easier as you get older. Now we have that very simple, I'm doing this one and I don't care what you say. But you know, when you first start out in a marriage, it's like he had work, you know, like right now he's got work out in Berlin, of course, because of the pandemic, he's not flying there, so he's working from his office. But when he does go out there, then I have to make sure I'm not filming anything during that time. And then the other thing is to have a great support network of friends, which I do. I couldn't have my life without my family and friends. If my parents had been around, believe me, my parents would have probably brought up my kids, you know, because they wouldn't have left them alone for a second. But this has been a real life lesson for me in that, you know, I've said this to my daughter, I want my daughter to be independent. I want her to have whatever life she wants to have. She's 17. I said, what do you want to do for a living? She wants to be a fashion designer. And I've gone, great, we'll do whatever we can to help you become a fashion designer. And, you know, and she's like, it's funny because they, you know, when they're 15 and 16, they go, when do I have to get married? I'm like, there's no time limit. I said, you choose when you meet someone that you fall in love with.
You tend to be putting those timelines in place at that age, don't you? By this age, I'll accomplish this.
Exactly. But I don't think that's real anymore. I think genuinely, people should do what they instinctively feel is right for them at the time that's right, especially women. You know, I think there's this misconception that if you're a strong woman, you must be a real bitch. And that's not what it is. If you're a strong woman, you really know your mind. And if you have someone that supports you through that and helps you achieve that, then you're very lucky. And I will also say, I say this a lot. I'm 52. And, you know, I think it's really important that no matter what age you are, if you feel you need a change in your life, and if you feel that you're not getting the support or the love that you want, you need to be honest about it. You know, don't stick at something because you feel you have to. You know, only stick at it if it's working for you. Otherwise, let's just move on.
It's been really refreshing speaking to you. Definitely getting that Statue of Liberty sort of vibe. Like, I just feel like it's been free flowing. Just as a sort of final question then, like, what is your advice for upcoming artists, change makers, actors, comics? What is it, and not just generally those, that sort of genre, but the global Indian ones, how can they break through that glass ceiling is it a perceived glass ceiling? Do you think it still exists?
No, it still exists.
Okay. So like, what are your thoughts around that?
there is a glass ceiling, and I say to every Indian person out there, grab a little ice pick and start climbing that ladder. Everything takes time. I'm a bit sanguine about that now because I'm too old and too ugly. So for me, it's just you take your time and you just chip away at whatever it is that you wanted to get to where you want to. But I will say, if you are considering a career in the acting profession, really go and train somewhere. A lot of people just think, oh, I'll just do a little thing on, I don't know, Instagram and I'll be famous. It's not about being famous. It's about being skilled at what you do. And the other bit of advice I will give you, and this is a bit of a harsh reality, I do what my mum told me to do, which is to put on a 5-year plan. Say to yourself, right, in 5 years, where do I want to be? If in 5 years you want to be a jobbing actor, an actual working actor, make that your goal. If in 5 years that hasn't happened, reevaluate. Because there's a difference between being ambitious and, persistent, and then just being stubborn and expecting the world to put everything at your feet. Also have one other string to your bow. If you want to be a writer, also be a performer. If you want to be a dancer, also try and sing. Have one other thing that you can do, because that really, really helps in this profession, because it is tough. And right now, don't be discouraged by the pandemic. In fact, there's more productions happening in the pandemic than ever before. So get out there as fast as you can.